tasks. ID setup, done. Even with a web server now. Hello world, easy. Checkboxes, done. JavaScript retrieve data on checkboxes, done, done, done. Download the text file. Now I just need to create the text. Now I just need to create the text. I am sorry to say, but I lied. The tasks that I thought I'd completed last week have pretty much gone out the window. I did look into doing the task number 5, doing the create content, but I seem to fall into a trap of just one more line of code. Just edit this, and it seems that it's not going quite as to plan as possible. For those that this is the first video you're watching about Eth-ter-I-Die, basically all I want to do is create a very simple printable text file that explains based on essentially what Ethereum apps, Dapps services you use. It gives you kind of a user guide in order for your loved ones to retrieve your assets after you die. So this is my very first kind of coding project, and I thought I'd be learning HTML, JavaScript, how to use GitHub, and doing a bit of playing around with Bootstrap and React when I had the finished product. Things have not turned out how I planned, and you'll see why. This is where we were last time, at the end of last episode. So we had these kind of checkboxes. So checkbox 1, we're just to do the example for MetaMask. So in this MetaMask example, this is the checkbox, it's got the value MetaMask, and it's got the label MetaMask. So when I click on MetaMask, something should happen, right? But before that does anything, they've got some script down here that essentially fetches metamask.txt, which is one of the files attached to here, and then it kind of saves it as mmData equals data, mmData there as a variable. And then we have this function gather. So essentially what we're doing here is checking if element w2, and element w2 is our good friend MetaMask ID w2, and if the MetaMask box is ticked, then essentially you get the MetaMask data, which is at the time the fetched metamask.txt file, and then from there it's now saved as a new variable called sw2, and all of these are then summed up to have var sum, file sum, intro plus sw1, sw2, etc, etc. Then return file sum, and then this last function here is a download file function, which essentially needs the name of the file, the contents, and all that stuff. And if we scroll a bit further down, this is calling the function. So the function download file here, we're calling it Eth-ter-I-Die.txt, and then gather. The gather function is called, and the gather function will essentially return the file sum, which is the sum of all this. And we'll see that in action in here. So we've got MetaMask, and we're going to download the file Eth-ter-I-Die, open with text editor, and this is all the information. This is the MetaMask information, so we know that that's in the MetaMask file. To prove that, I'm just going to go into MetaMask. This is the MetaMask information. Let's celebrate if it works. Look at that, identical. So that's where we left off last week. So the idea was to, once I had this kind of blueprint done, just add all the content and have this kind of beta alpha kind of version that I'll be able to just start sharing with people, and they'll be able to use it as well. However, I realize that it's going to get really, really clunky really, really quickly. So for example, if I want to add a new wallet, let's say a Trezor, isn't it? There's a Trezor wallet, I want to add a Trezor wallet. I need to add it into here as a checkbox, and then I need to add it into a fetch information to fetch that text. And also every single app I'm fetching as well, I need to fetch every single app or service that I've got this kind of text file for, as well as an intro and end document as well. So there's going to be a lot of documents being fetched on load of the web page, which isn't ideal. And then every single time I add a new application, I have to add in another file here, and also add in a variable here, and that just seems just very unscalable. What I did, I just started tinkering. I didn't record it, but I will go through what I did. So I have Eth-ter-I-Die here and Eth-ter-I-Die test. Guess what I've been doing? So the whole point was to make it scalable. This took a lot of time. I've aged about 5 years since I started, and we're going to do a quick comparison. So this is the index HTML this time of the test one. I've got the checkboxes still. So we've got Ledger and we've got MetaMask here. Rather than having every single application being brought in via the fetch function, when the checkbox goes through a change, so whether it's checked or unchecked, I essentially get selected checkbox values. So this is a function, select checkbox, get selected checkbox values. This is this one here. This one essentially, it does a check every single time a box is checked, turns Dapps sum, which is another variable, the summary of all the Dapps information. It turns that into nothing to start off with, and then it checks every single checkbox to see if it is checked, and then from there it's going to create a kind of array with all the values attached. So every single checkbox is checked, gets turned into an array or a part of an array, and then for each of those values we then push the checkbox value to do fetch Dapp data. Before we go any further, I'm going to explain how I got to this. So I found this site called this, and essentially it saved me so much time and just life in general. So thank you to the authors of this. I will link it. This is essentially what I've utilized in my code to get the new value each time. So it's essentially finding all the checkboxes, because what this is doing, so this is a good example here. So it says select a checkbox, and if you select BMW, it has BMW. If you select Mercedes, it has BMW and Mercedes. So this is essentially what I needed for my application. So if I selected MetaMask, I wanted all the data associated with MetaMask to be added to the blob file, or the variable at the time. And if I wanted to select another one, say Mercedes, that would then be also added to it. But I also wanted to make sure that if I unselected it or deselected it, that would be removed, and then only the Mercedes application is going to be input. Rather than displaying a value, I'm actually using another application called fetch Dapp data. So this is for each variable. I'm essentially putting in the value into another function called fetch Dapp data. So fetch Dapp data is essentially reworking of the fetch command, but what I'm doing is getting the value of the checkboxes. And this is what I thought it was clever, but it's probably not that clever. So what I've done is, rather than making the value just something arbitrary, the value is actually the file path. So here it's /ledger.txt. So as the file path is the value, that means when we make fetch address, which is a new variable we've declared, the value is now the path of the text file. So from there, it's just very similar to the rest of the fetch commands, because then all you're doing is getting the response text from the fetch command, so essentially getting that information from the metamask.txt file, calling it data, and then saving that data to Dapps. So you're not just saving it, you're adding it to Dapps. Just looking at gather. So let's look at gather in the previous one. So gather here looked hideous. That was what gather was. Not great. But now gather is just the file sum of intro, DAppSum, and end. All we need to do if we want to add a new DApp or service is add in a checkbox. And that's it. Because then every single time that new checkbox is selected, it now calls this function, obviously adding all the value information to it. And then from there it's being added to the file to be retrieved, which is a lot more scalable and yes, a lot more stress-free. I also went a step further and did a bit of organization as well. So in my final iteration that I'm going to show today, so this is Eth-ter-I-Die, and you can see that I've been playing around with Github as well. The link to the Github is in the description below. It took me quite a while to get it working, and you should be able to see. Yeah, so I've been doing a few things with GitHub here. I've also separated DApp data and set data, so I might change the name of set data as a folder, because essentially the sets data is kind of the template data that will always be there when you click download. You'll have the intro text and the end text that will be in there no matter what. So I wanted to store all the DApp data, DApp or DApp services data, into a single folder with all the text files in there, and just to clean things up, make it neater. What I've also done is I've made sure just the HTML is on one site, one page, and then I've got in my core.js file I've got all my JavaScript. Just because I've seen looks like the convention. In some of the guides I was using, it did say that you need to separate the code, so not completely sure why, but hopefully that will benefit us in the future. But anyway, so what I'll do, I'll just show that it actually works. So this is the new one. I was just, as you can see, a bit more reduced than the previous if we look into this one. So this is the long code that would have taken loads of time to add a single new DApp or service. I've made it just for testing purposes, of course, a little bit slicker, so just have to select Ledger. OpenSea and Uniswap don't work yet, so let's select Ledger and MetaMask, download file, it works, OK, and then look, we've got Ledger and we've got the MetaMask information. And just to prove that it does work, even if I'd have nothing selected and we download the file, as you can see the file size is reduced and we have no DApp information in there. This has been stressful to get to this stage, but I'm very, very happy with the code now. I know some optimizations can be done, and please let me know if you've got any ideas. This feels a lot more scalable. As you can see from my website, it's not very pretty. So what I want to do is actually bring this convert to Bootstrap React into my actual task list, and what I want to do is try and get the same functionality I currently have in a Bootstrap/React app. So the reason why I'm using Bootstrap and React is because it seems from the research I've been doing that these are good tools for user interface and kind of design utilizing JavaScript. Kind of modular, and there's a lot of libraries and a lot of tutorials. It seems like the best way to go. May change this in the future, but making my application pretty, I think it's good to try and play around with these two components. So that's what I'm going to be aiming in the next episode. Feel free to subscribe if you've got this far. You may be interested about more developments in this project. Other than that, if you've got any comments, put them on YouTube, put them on Twitter, or on the GitHub. And yeah, thank you for watching, and have a great day. See you next time.